Oh, I got a feeling this thing should be called World of Warcraft because there's so much backstory you need to know. I'm Ryan, your host of The Toast, and this time we're going to be talking about Warcraft. Not World of Warcraft, just Warcraft. I'm not familiar with World of Warcraft, okay? Knowing nothing about Warcraft, this is what interested me about this movie, is if it could have a standalone story that was going to keep me interested and not just be another piece of the franchise that only fans would understand. So right off the bat, I was watching intently, trying to take it all in and trying to be entertained by this movie. Unfortunately, it loses you pretty quick. This movie has a simple setup, but even a simple premise needs a little bit of explaining to get it going. This movie kind of starts without you and expects you to have a pre-existing knowledge of the World of Warcraft. That being said, the first shot of this movie is a very cold open, and I really liked it because I just kind of plonked you right there in the middle of something. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I mean, it's the opening shot. It's just like one guy facing off against one orc. And it keeps it very simple. Like, there you go. It's laid out in front of you. Human and an orc, and they're kind of circling each other, and they're about to have a fight, and the effects are good. The orc is menacing. The human is kind of righteous and ready to go. No music needed. It was a very lonesome, dusty landscape with the focus completely on these characters. I quite like that shot. Then we get into some narration. Narration is great stuff. It really does fill in the blanks, gives you that little bit of backstory. It's basically the opening scroll in the front of Star Wars. Except that's just text, it's not narration. But it's the same premise. Now, the narration was effective, but it was very small and easily forgettable. I cannot remember a thing that narration said, and it never happens again in the movie. So you're only left with that little kind of seed. And they never water it, nothing grows out of it. Then again, this movie is kind of nothing but big, colourful fun, and it's very obvious, very black and white, who the good guys are and who the villains are. I mean, really, obvious bad guy is obvious. And why in movies is green always synonymous with evil? It's my favourite colour, what does that say about me? Oh, I guess that's why Duvatine, Dora the Explorer is tan instead of green. Although I'm guessing the green orcs are like zombie, kind of brought back from the dead, affected by magic orcs, and the tan ones are kind of like natural, pure, vegan orcs. Yeah, like I said, not much is explained. So what I can surmise from the story of World of Warcraft is that we have the orcs in a world of their own. They're not actually on Earth or wherever this place is. They are in a world apart, and the Dark Sorcerer right from the get-go is like, okay, we're going to go through this magic portal, we're going to conquer this Earth because we've kind of ruined our own. A little environmental commentary there, mayhaps? So anyway, the orc army goes through the portal, invades Earth, and then the humans are all, what is this? The king and the kingdom are like, oh, hey, we can't have this, let's sort this out. It's very basic. I mean, you've got an invading army, and then you've got the humans, but of course some of the orcs don't want to be doing this because they know it's all dark magic and stuff, want to side with the humans. They kind of do. Yeah, so basic Warcraft plot. I have to admit, for everything that's in the screenplay of this movie, there were some twists that I did not expect. Mostly involving characters who, if they live or die, but I did not expect their fates to be what they were. Warcraft fans probably know all this stuff perfectly well, but for me, my lack of knowledge was actually a benefit here because I got to enjoy some surprises in the movie. So our cast of characters are very cookie-cutter archetypes. We've got the main knight, we've got the magician, we've got the king, we've got the outsider orc warrior lady all kind of wrapped into one. Hey, is the king Papa Stark? Now, unfortunately, the characters do seem kind of bland because we don't get to spend much time with them as they're rushed from scene to scene. Luckily, in this kind of movie, in this genre, the characters are, like I said, very basic archetypes, so you don't need to get to know them too well. I mean, you know, oh, he's the righteous knight, he's the righteous king, he's the corrupt sorcerer. It's very plain to see. Although, to be honest, the humans are mostly indistinguishable from one beard to the other. Now, Paula Patton plays Corona, Gamora. The green one. I kind of like her. She's a good actress, but even though she's kind of choking on very basic fantasy orc dialogue, which they quickly abandon later on in the film for very fluent human speech. I might just like her because she's green. What is it with green girl? I got a thing for green girls, okay? Leave me alone. But the orc, Duratan, voiced by Toby Cabell, he really did steal the show. I couldn't count how many times the movie just slowed down and panned in on those big sappy eyes of his. Honestly, I'm sure that a lot of time was spent rendering those big sappy CGIs. Point is, we got to spend the most poignant time with this character and get to know him better than anyone else in the movie. We were there when his child was born. We were there when his wife... I'm not going to spoil anything. The point is, we were there with him for some pretty tough decisions. What can I say? He's a beautifully rendered character and easy to root for. Although he's more human than any other orc, so relating to him and liking him for that is kind of the wrong thing to do because he's an orc. You're supposed to like him for being an orc. touchy subject. But my favorite character had to be the Griffin. This thing is badass. When this thing flew into battle and started pecking and clawing and throwing people around, I had a big smile on my face the whole time. It looked great. Although the Griffins, like in Lord of the Rings, I feel like they could have solved every problem very easily, but they forgot about and never used. One thing I was disappointed at was I know Warcraft has a lot of different creatures and races, and in the film we only got a handful of them, and even then they were relegated to the background or sitting in a council meeting. So the design in this movie, I gotta say the production design was actually really impressive. That's what kept my interest through the whole film. Everything's big and chunky and it feels just like the game, even though I haven't played it. I know enough about it that the armor is just all-encompassing, big, bulky stuff. But they made it practical in the movie. Like, it's wearable shit. They don't just walk around in big CG suits. Yeah, it's big, but they can still move, so the actors are wearing it. I also do appreciate the use of color in this movie. It is a bright, colorful film. Most of the time, when especially in big, heavy CGI stuff, they make everything dark, and I think it probably makes CGI easier to do when it's dark. But this one is light, it's full of color, it's a big, beautiful, magical world. Speaking of magic, magic is always depicted differently in different movies and different genres. This one, they've opted for like the big wispy streams of colors with a few little runy bits around the hands. It worked. It was it felt basic. I'm pretty sure that's what it is in the game too, so I can't fault them on that or changing any design if they're basing it on the game. But it still felt like magic. It didn't just feel like them shooting rainbows out of their hands. CGI, this movie's full of CGI. Practical sets are actually very few, but the CGI is done very well. I gotta admit, especially the bad guy orc, the sorcerer guy, was on screen. It had my attention fixed on him. All I could do was examine every part of him because he was rendered so beautifully. And every time he was on screen, there was something new I noticed about him going like, wow, that is good attention to detail. Although CG riding, when you take a live action person and put them on a CG animal to ride them, in this case a griffin, never quite looks right. You have to either go fully CG or fully practical. Yes, Ryan, because you're going to find a practical griffin to ride. Am I expecting too much? I'm expecting too much. Now, to be honest, I did not hate this movie. It was visually stimulating. The only problem was everything was kind of dangled in front of you like a carrot and then whipped away before you really had a chance to appreciate it. This is where I expect Warcraft fans will know everything to fill in the gaps, but a regular audience member like me is kind of lost and just left to appreciate the baseline fantasy story when they're probably getting a much richer experience. The same can be said for any movie based on a pre-existing franchise. You can't please everybody. Is it made for a new audience? Is it made for just the fans? There's no obvious middle ground here. Now, screenplay and dialogue, this movie had a perfectly serviceable script. I mean, you're not going to do any better for a fantasy movie, and you're certainly not going to do any worse. But in terms of quippy dialogue, now quippy dialogue doesn't quite fit in a fantasy setting. It kind of just feels out of place. Now, I'm not saying it ruined the movie. What did kind of ruin the movie, especially the pacing of the movie, was it felt so disjointed. It very much kept jumping from scene to scene, to place, leaving a lot of stuff out. There was too much lore in Warcraft for one film. And they don't give you any of it. They do not hold your hand in this movie. They just splurt it out onto the screen and expect you to just mop it up and make sense of it. Things happen and characters show up without any explanation, and it makes the whole movie feel very random. Me, like a lot of people, had high hopes for Warcraft. It was directed by Duncan Jones. I mean, he did Moon and Source Code, both excellent yet overlooked films. I think I really wanted to like Warcraft because it was such a big fantasy punch 'em up with big monsters, beasties, armor, swords, magic getting fired around. We rarely get a movie of that much excitement in a fantasy setting. Now, as much as I want to give this movie a high rating because it's kind of unique even for a video game movie, and I gotta admit I did enjoy it and it held my attention perfectly fine, I'm still gonna have to give it a beans on toast. For all its visual splendor, there's just no substance that's going to hold a non-gamer audience who are just going to see it as the superhero squad version of Lord of the Rings. So much for the dawn of big-budget blockbuster video game movies. Assassin's Creed, it's up to you now. Anyway, click away if you want to see more from me, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers! I just realized there was no Leroy Jenkins joke in this movie. That is something I would have expected to happen. There was a Wilhelm though, and I give that respect.